my name is James Rahme. I'm the head physiotherapist for the Manly Sea Eagles. I've been very fortunate. I suppose I've been working in the NRL probably through, I suppose, in the early days as a sports scientist and as a physio now since 2004. So I've been fortunate to be around for a while. So and still going, which is good. Before we start, just want to go through a couple of housekeeping. Just to update you. So the session will go no longer than 40 minutes. We'll hold our questions to the end. We'll try our best to answer as many questions as possible. And if we can't answer them today, hopefully I've got another webinar later on in the series, so I'll hopefully be able to answer it then. Can you please put your microphones on mute during the session? And we'll see how we go. So today, the presentation, it's on knee prehab, knee taping, knee rehab. And that was the title, but geez, that's a lot of content. So I'll probably start off today with knee prehab. We'll see where we go. We'll freestyle it a little bit, and hopefully I can make the talk worthwhile, insightful, and useful for everyone. So if we start off with prehab, I'll probably go through I suppose what I think is probably the best definition of prehab, talk about a bit of the history so we understand what prehab is actually about and where it's come from. It might help the presenters moving forward not to actually go for that then. So if I can cover it nice and early, hopefully I can help them out. We'll talk about a couple of models and then we'll go on to the knee. So I suppose me looking up what prehab is, I suppose by definition, the best definition I could probably explain prehab to be is it's personalized, continually evolving exercise programs that is focused on the needs of the athlete or the patient. And I think it's probably a definition I'll go and come back to throughout the talk, because it's I think a lot of those words within that definition is key. So personalized, continually evolving exercise program that leads to focused on the needs of the patient and the actual athlete. So we'll keep going through that. I'll repeat it a few times, so I apologize. I suppose documented prehab research that I came across was in the 1940s. It was rehabilitation, and revocation in the army. And basically that was an article on post-World War II rejected men that could not get into the army to reach the standards of mental and physical conditioning. Basically, that cohort, they put them for 2 months of intervention, and they realised, geez, these substandard candidates actually became standard. And they found that for 12,000 men within that study, that 85% of them had an improvement. And I think, oh, geez, there must be something in this. But unfortunately, as I look for the research, the next noted documentation wasn't until the 1980s. And then in the 1980s, a lot of things around prehab was basically around post-operative. A bit of athletes' introduction to prehab began then, but also significant on, there was a lot of significant emphasis on, geez, where if we do something before an operation, we're finding good outcomes post-operation. So I suppose that led into, I suppose nowadays we look at a lot of systematic reviews, meta-analyses, and if we jump up a conclusion on the research of what's prehab, what does it say in the research? Unfortunately, there isn't too many high-quality research papers out there. And what I mean by that is there may be flaws in outcome parameters, intervention, methodology, maybe the group numbers aren't significant, but as a consensus, it shows that there is actually, for prehab perspective, it's good, but we probably need a bit more research to sort of give a definitive answer. But I suppose that's from the research perspective. So going from the research perspective, if we talk about the models in prehab, we obviously focus on the physical exercise. What I just want to make a note on that we can't ignore that There's a medical aspect in the model for optimal prehab. There's a nutritional aspect, a nutritional support, and a psychosocial aspect. And just in general, prehab, the theory around it is we want to aim to improve functional capacity, and if we can potentially improve functional ability. And we'll probably delve into what those actually mean. So, all right, let's go to the knee now. Let's finally start talking about the knee. So in prehab, what we want to do is we want to optimize knee function. That's plain and simple. You know, I suppose it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that. But regarding knee prehab, I suppose there's three groups of people we can talk about. We can discuss people with comorbidities. We can discuss pre-op, and we can discuss rehabilitation in sport. I'm going to delve into obviously the sport aspects of things. I think I'm not an expert in the field, but I think I like to think that over the years I've got a bit of experience, and hopefully I can shed a bit of clinical experience regards to that. So the aim of prehab regarding a sporting environment is we want to prep the athlete for performance. And what does that mean that we need to prep the athlete for performance? Basically, like, we want to improve their function, their capacity, but at the same time, we want to make sure that through rehabilitation that we're decreasing injury risk. And I suppose that's my field. And when we look at injuries, to prevent an injury, we need to look at the data. And if we're looking at prevention, we're looking at, okay, what sort of injuries are there? Yeah, regarding knees, what sort of injuries are internal mechanism injuries, and what's an external mechanism injury? External mechanism being a contact-based injury, and internal being potentially a soft tissue-based injury. And I suppose what I would classify as an internal mechanism injury, so being non-contact for knees would be, I'll classify basically an ACL being a non-contact injury. And we can delve into ACLs and prehab as a conversation, or if there's any questions. But regarding external being, let's say a medial ligament, or a PCL, landing on your knee. Regarding prehab exercises on a healthy individual, an ACL being non-contact and leading to potentially a loss of a lot of game time. I think they're, from a sporting perspective, I suppose, definitely from our coach, he'll be giving me orders of, you know what, we don't want these injuries. They're disastrous regarding loss of time, so we want to make sure we can prevent them as much as possible. So when we talk about injury, then we're going to talk about, let's talk about functional capacity now. So prehab, we've talked about, okay, we want to look at the amount of injuries, what are the most common injuries, what injuries can we prevent, and there's out of those injuries of what we can prevent, what leads to the most game time loss. Okay, what regarding the capacity can we actually intervene? So when I'm looking at a prehab program, and we go back to the definition being a personalized, a continually evolving exercise program focused on the athlete's needs. What are the athlete's needs? So regarding a knee, we need to break it down to the aspects of a knee, and what in the knee aspect, in this capacity, can we intervene to, let's say, prevent an ACL injury? I think one thing we need to look at is range of motion. So if we're looking at the knee, range of motion, what crosses over the knee joint? So we're looking at regarding capacity, what can we intervene? Can we their hamstrings? What's their range? Their gastroc, their quad. That's one aspect in range of motion. We're looking at stability and control. To even a more extent, dynamic stability and control. But before we go to dynamic, we need to make sure we tick off the stability aspect of it. Proprioception, awareness in space, movement efficiency. In my opinion, I suppose, part of your prehab program, especially from an ACL perspective, we need to make sure that they're moving better. They can turn. They can on a cue step and make sure that they're stepping efficiently. And what does that mean? I suppose that's a whole conversation in itself. Strength, not only strength, we're looking at functional strength. So there's a lot of components that fit into that capacity that we need to look at. And I'm going to probably include as another marker being overall health. And what I mean by that is, I think in my experience, when you're rehabilitating someone from a knee injury, weight is a significant component. The heavier you are, the more loading there is for the knee joint. If there's comorbidities like a knee cartilage defect and they're too heavy, the knee's just going to keep blowing up. So from the aspect of the lighter you are, the more efficient you are running. That's definitely a key. Okay, so we looked at the capacity. Let's move into regarding prehab. What do I look for in a sporting environment? What am I trying to achieve? After looking at capacities, we're looking at, we know what the capacities we're looking at. We know what injuries are prevalent. Let's screen them. Let's look at these muscles. Let's look at these joints. Let's look at these functional capacities. Like the muscles I explained, let's test our gastroc. Let's look at their strength. Let's do a maximum calf raise test. Let's look at their hamstrings. Let's look at Nordics. Let's look at quad strength, whether it's on a force play, a functional like squat. Whether it's getting a gym aware technology and doing some leg strength exercises and look at the velocity and the movement. I think that's one component regarding screening that's significant. Regarding joints, what else, I suppose, impacts on the knee? We know that there's a good relationship between the hip and the knee, so we can't disregard the hip. We need to assess from a functional perspective what's happening at the ankle joint. So I think there's a lot of things we need to screen, and I suppose that might be another topic that maybe we discuss later in the series about screening and what we screen and how we screen different muscles, different joints, how we screen to a functional capacity. So we've seen so far the capacity of what we look at, the most prevalent injuries. When we're looking at programming a rehabilitation program, we've screened them. I suppose then we look at timing and delivery. When is a good time to do it? I think that can prove to be difficult in our environment. A lot of rugby league players, they have a lot on their plate in regards to, they might come into the workplace. They'll have to do their strapping. They'll have to get their treatment for certain injuries they need to do. Then they'll have video. Then they'll have a field session, a weight session, a yoga session, massage, treatment for other injuries. So where do we place all these prehab exercises? There's no right or wrong answer. I suppose the question is, do we want to, I suppose in my field, do we want to add another component to their day, or do we want to trickle it in to be almost like they don't notice that they're doing it? I think there's positives to both. There's players out there that I've worked with that will say, you know what, I want a prehab program. I want to come in early. I want to do it. And there's other players that say, you know what, I'm busy. There's enough in the program. I'm not really that motivated. So you've got to work into do you put it within the session, the weight session program? Do we time it to be 2 or 3 times a week? When is a good time to deliver the program? In the context of the session, we need to consider, I suppose, regarding giving them extra work. Where's their, speaking to your other performance team in a high performance environment. Where are they at physically? Are they ready to do some prehab stuff? Are they injured? Yes, they are ready to do some prehab stuff. Are they overloaded? Have they done? Have they got too much to catch up with in the strength component perspective? We've got to think about the mental aspect. Are they overloaded? Do they have other things going up at home? Do we have to look at their lifestyles? Have they just recently had a kid? Have they just moved houses? Do we want to put more things on their plate? We need to consider, I suppose, regarding prescribing these exercises. Are they, under a lot of pressure from the coach? Are they positioned up for grabs? From a tactical perspective, or do they have, from the coaching perspective, a lot of technical issues that if they don't get that sorted, they're not going to get selected. So the timing and delivery of rehab program is probably just as significant as anything regarding rehab and prehab. So I think that's a really you can't disregard that. So I suppose we can go to some Q&A regarding prehab and exercises for the knee. I think again, just my main take-home message for the prehab side of things is there's so many things we're looking at, and we need to personalize it. And to personalize it, you need to make sure that you have assessed that individual and catered to their needs. So we can go through, oh yeah, what's your favorite exercise to do, and you know what's the best bang for buck. We can go through that. That might be a whole seminar to go through. But if you know what the patient's needs are, or the player's needs, I think you keep it simple. In my experience, if you can include as many muscle joints and keep it as functional as possible, and yeah, just need to understand the individual's needs. Questions and answers. I suppose I might leave them to after I do an example of a knee strapping. Again, I can go through a couple of knee prehab exercises, but I think if I went through those and if I went further through the prehab aspects of things, I think I could be talking all night. So hopefully I'm being clear at the moment, and yeah, you've taken something out of that so far. I might get a knee strapping into the session now, because I know there's a lot of individuals that have signed up to look at see what we do regarding knee strapping. I might just give one example, see how I go through time, and then through the Q&A, I might be prompted to discuss further through the prehab side of things, or I might be prompted to maybe talk more from the taping side of things. So the products I'll use today regarding taping, I'm going to do a medial, an MCL. What is the MCL anatomy-wise? The medial collateral ligament. It consists of two bands. But we'll go through the medial once I go through, I suppose, the products that are being used, because I just want everyone to know what I'm using first, and then we'll discuss about why I'm doing things for the medial and what I'm trying to prevent and further. So the tapes I'll use today as what I do in my environment, from someone coming back from a significant medial ligament injury, is I'll be using the Luco wrap. I'll be using the 38mm rigid, and I'll be using the 75mm overwrap. They're the things I'll probably be using, that I use predominantly when I'm strapping a medial. Okay, so I think we're on time. Hopefully everything's working fine. Let's go for this medial taping. So before we start taping the medial, as you can see, my model, a beautiful model, wearing our famous colours of the Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles. The medial is it's a thick ligament, has two aspects, a superficial layer and a deep layer. The superficial layer of the medial attaches 7 to 10 centimetres below the joint line, and the deeper fibres of the medial attached to the deeper margins of the medial meniscus. So I'll go through this taping. Hopefully you can hear me well, and hopefully you can see this well. It's a little bit difficult not having a model. I was hoping to call on one of our players to come in, but unfortunately for the circumstances we're in at the moment, I suppose it's a little bit unfortunate, but maybe as the series continues and the laws and the rules are open, I'll get one of the players in, and maybe that might be a good example of showing players that have these deficiencies and how I strap them. But usually on game day for a medial ligament, let's fix up these shorts. So a lot of times I'll get our players to be maybe getting in their jocks to strap their medials. So get their shorts up. See if it sticks. Perfect. Okay. So this is something that I do. It's not right or wrong what you're doing or what you've done in the past. I suppose the biggest thing of me coming on board and doing this webinar is just to show you what I do, and you might like it, you might not like it, but at least you get to see what one of the physios within this industry does on a regular basis. So usually I would pull off some Luco. Place it above the knee joint. A lot of times I don't do a big piece, I do half pieces. I don't like to go all the way around a joint. I use the Luco as a under wrap. Some people use as anchor, sorry. A lot of you would use taping as an anchor, but I'm fortunate that Elastoplast provided me with a lot of stock, so I'm able to do this. All right. Put some Luco underneath. Generally speaking, unlike this mannequin, the players we deal with have bigger knees, so usually they feel on a little bit better, but hopefully things are looking all right so far. All right, I'll put a piece of Luco medially. So this is my that's my underlayer. So when I'm strapping a medial, if I'm thinking about the knee, the attachment being at the medial femoral condyle, a medial ligament, I want to cover it. There's obviously people that have rules that they'll go, all right, let's go 3 strips one way, 3 strips another way, and then go straight lines. What I say is cover that area, make it tight. So before I actually strap the knee, actually one thing to note is you will get athletes that are sweaters. So you may want to spray an adhesive spray beforehand. Just make sure you dab that adhesive spray, because if the area stays wet, obviously it's a little bit harder to strap. I do recommend players before I start strapping to shave any hair they have there, and they end up obviously shaving their whole leg, and then they end up shaving both legs. So that's all I experience in my field. So before I start strapping, I make sure that I sometimes get a rigid. I place it underneath the heel of the athlete to keep them with a slightly bent knee. So we're looking at a knee roughly about 30 degrees, knee flexion. If someone's coming back from a grade 3 medial ligament, I would get them to keep their knee straight, keep their torso and their hips straight. I'll get them to actually internally rotate their foot, just so I can potentially, in theory, bring those 2 joints closer together. Now regarding strapping, so knee bent, slightly internally rotated, make sure that the player or the athlete is facing you. If you get them to internally rotate, they'll try and rotate their body. You want to make sure that they're putting weight through their heel and they're loading up that area. Now strap the knee, hopefully you can all see properly. So what I usually do is, regarding the strapping, is with my hand on the roll, place it above the joint, pull, and and lock it in. Okay. So I'll basically fan that and strap them adjacent. If I draw the ligament, I'm recovering this whole area. So going across your body, pulling nice and tight, and locking it in. Again, take it in. Now, this individual with this size knee, will I keep going? Yeah, I will. So I'm looking, so far I've had three strips, getting tighter. Now, I'll fan straight now. And so far, that's a start. So far, I've basically strapped cross the medial and just fanned it out. Done about 5 strips, starting from that where the anterior part of that medial femoral condyle is. Then I'll go the other way. So if I think that's where the medial is, I'll probably strap from where I haven't started taping yet. Making sure that I don't tape on the actual medial hamstring. I think that's a really important note. You don't want to inhibit any muscles or strap them and then they can't extend because their hamstrings have been strapped down too tight. So you want to make sure that you're getting joint the whole way. So strap in there, nice and tight. Oop. 2 strips so far. 3 strips so far. Usually when I go the other way from the posterior medial femoral condyle, I'll basically go towards where the pes anterior is. As I suggested beforehand, or when we spoke about anatomy, we know that the distal medial femoral condyle, distal medial ligament, the superficial layer, is 7 to 10 centimeters below the joint. So don't be afraid to go low. I wouldn't be going past where the pes anterior is. So I've got 3 strips here. I'll probably now start straightening that up. About 4 strips. I'll see where we're at, and then with this model, if you can see, it's rotating. We'll go after strapping 4 or 5 strips that way, 4 or 5 strips that way. Correct straight strips. Then I'll probably have a look and see what I've missed. If I've covered the ligament properly, I'll be saying, okay, over here, I want to cover over here a little bit more. Keep a straight strip there. And then, you know what? I want to cover a bit more over here. So after doing the basics, let's say 3 or 4 strips one way, the other way in a straight or freestyle, in regards to just making sure that I've got enough coverage there. After I've strapped that, I'll cut a strip, not all the way around, look it off. Lock it off. Or I do 2 strips like that. Lock it off. Lock it off. Now, obviously, you've got half Leuko wrap, half rigid. Your side's bare at the moment, the other side. So with the Leuko wrap, other half piece, connect it up. Connect it up. And then we can overwrap that from there. My experience again with sweaters, or if it's real wet weather, I'll block it off. Fix-a-mole. So I use Fix-a-mole as my anchors to lock off, and as a starting point, grab overwrap, and not too tight. Overwrap, boys. I don't know if you can see this properly. Again, hopefully, our next webinar, geez, this is horrible. Basically, with the overwrap, my goal is just cover what's been done. Oh, that's horrible. Anyway. After I've overworked, piece of Luco, lightly, so not compressing any structures, lightly, go around, real light. Lightly go around, not tight, I want the calf to feel tight. And that's generally how I'll lock off the tape. And that's the first time I've taped a mannequin, but that was interesting. So I suppose that's how I'll strap a medial. It's definitely a common injury that gets strapped in our sport, in rugby league, because being a contact sport, especially with obviously all the wrestle, unfortunately players that have had a medial are exposed to re-injury. So when we talk about prehab and looking at the types of injuries, yes, MCLs are external mechanism injury, but if you personalize a program to someone who has had a deficient MCL or hasn't scarred up properly from a medial ligament injury, or if they're still pretty acute, you can say basically prehab is making sure they're strapped at all sessions, contact sessions, because you're trying to prevent the reoccurrence of that injury. Alrighty, so let's go to some Q&A. Let's see how this works. One moment, let's see if I can open this up. There we go. Okay. All right. So again, there's going to be there might be a lot of questions. I'll try and answer as many as possible, but hopefully, if there's a lot of questions and they're real similar, and after this presentation you're like, James, you didn't go through this in particular, or I thought you would explain this, or we want to learn more about actual exercises or rehab-wise or strapping techniques, in the next webinar, I'll try and achieve that. So if I go through the questions at the moment. Okay, I've got a question regarding, would an ACL taping be similar to an MCL taping? In my experience, I wouldn't want to tape an ACL. I know that there's people that do try and do it. I think with the rehab of an ACL being, with most surgeons saying at least 9 months, you'd want the athlete to be able to participate and not be sort of, I suppose it's a warning sign. If they're saying, I want to strap my knee, they might not be ready. They're probably lacking confidence. But I would strap an ACL if there was a comorbidity. So let's say they've had a tib fib issue, a proximal tib fibular issue, where I'll strap the tib fib. If they've had a chondral defect, or they've had an MCL injury when they've come back, when they initially did the ACL. As we know, if your MCL is compromised, then that's the next thing to go with a valgus force is an ACL. So I suppose I wouldn't tape. Just to answer that question, I won't tape an ACL, but I would tape if there was a comorbidity. There are braces out there that do protect ACLs. I think that you're probably better off for an ACL deficient individual if you want to strap them. Probably investing in those braces because they're real technical, they're expensive, but it's probably worthwhile in that regards. Hopefully I answered that question. Okay, good question from Jesse. How would a typical game day at the Sea Eagles look like for you, both pre and post game? Pre-game, usually for the Sea Eagles, we've got so many players we need to strap. Again, most rugby league players, by the age of at least 21 or 22 years old, they've at least had 1 or 2 surgeries. So you can think of, if you've got a group of guys of an average age of 25, how many comorbidities there are. So usually pre-game, I've got I arrive about 3 hours before a game. I probably cut out these pieces of Lujo wrap. I probably cut out for the tapings that I need to do, whether it's an injury or whether it's a player that feels more comfortable me strapping them. I'll probably I'll have a list of players. I'll tape what I'll be using this for, list them all up. I'll have players to strap pre-game. I'll have players to try and fit regarding treatment pre-game. And I suppose that's all in hope that there's no major injuries. Pre-game, there's obviously being a contact sport, and in the nature of the sport, I suppose you wouldn't see it watching on telly. But honestly, probably every game, I think Eddie Farrow, who will be presenting later on in one of the webinars, that he may agree with this, may disagree with this, but there's always one or two players that you have an injury cloud. So you'd strap them, they'll have a light week of training. You'd hope that they've tested their injury, and then pre-game, I'll be out there on the field. I'm fortunate to be an orange shirt. I'll be watching them the whole time, watching them pre-game. Obviously, during the game, I'm very fortunate that I'm the orange shirt. I'll manage any injuries I need to manage throughout the game. And post-game is about getting the players in, screening them, finding out who needs to go and be triaged regarding scans, any potential injections or whatnot. And I think that's a quick summary of what's pre and post game looking at the Seagulls. Make sure that any guys with injuries have their compression, have their ice, that they're coming to the medicals the next day. And that might be a topic, I probably can go into more detail, but that might be another webinar itself. Okay. What else is there? All right, good question. I suppose from an injury perspective, from Patrick, post-game or strenuous exercise, do you recommend players leave knee taping on for a short period to assist with swelling reduction? If it's just post-game and strenuous exercise and there's no injury, I definitely would not let them keep the tape on. If there's been an injury, would I keep the taping on for a while and try and leave them alone? A lot of times, if there's an injury and there's tape on that area, I'll be cutting that tape off to assess it. Yeah, that's probably what I'll do. I wouldn't be definitely keeping the tape on, because you'd want to, as a physio or as a medico, you want to diagnose what's going on. And if it's someone that's been you've been managing their injury and they've come off and they've freaked out, they've re-twinged, let's say, their medial ligament, you'd want to take them off because you're the physio that, I suppose, or me being the physio that I've seen that injury, that knee throughout the whole rehab process. I've tested it that many times. I'd want to retest it to get a feel of it and just reassure myself that they haven't re-injured it. So yeah, I've gone around in a circle there, but probably the short answer is I probably want to keep the taping on. Try and answer a couple more questions because we've passed the 40 minutes, but I'll see if I can. All right, another good question by Jacinta. How would you tape a player's knee for a game that is purely for mind over matter and they have no real injury? That's a good one. If there's no injury there, I suppose my thought process around it all is, if there's no injury, why would you tape it? I probably wouldn't. I think at my level, if they're asking to be strapped and there's no injury there, do they want to play? Are they confident? Is there something else going on? I suppose that's when we're delving into building that relationship with players. Fortunately, physios, we have the players' trust. They know that we're here to help them. We've got that duty of care to make sure that their bodies are fine and their bodies are their investment. They know that. So basically, I've gone in a circle there. I've lost track. I wouldn't tape them. I wouldn't do it. I think that's maybe been a bit cruel. There may be a circumstance of what type of taping they're asking for. If they're asking for an arch support or ankle strapping, yes, I'll tape them if they've got no injury, because I believe that there's a proprioceptive aspect of it. If they've had an injury there before, it might be 2 years ago, and their medial ligaments lax and they want to get it strapped, yes, I may strap that. But if they've never had a medial ligament injury, they're a younger player, the last thing I want to do is encourage bad habits, because if you encourage those habits with a young player, down the track you're asking for it, I suppose. Okay, so unfortunately, with the 40 minutes, that went quick for me. I'm not sure how that went for you. Just regarding the products, I suppose, just before I finish off, please go to your local pharmacy, your local sports wholesaler. Alternatively, the products from Elastoplast are on elastoplast.com.au. I hope that I thank you for logging on tonight. Hopefully, this presentation has been okay. Hopefully, it's been worthwhile, insightful, and useful. Again, if you want more information, go to the Elastoplast website. You could probably get more information through their Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I think the next presenter in a couple of days is Josh Tidwell, who's got a background in AFL. We'll be discussing probably to a more of extent sports tape and when is it best to be used. He may be able to answer some questions that have been asked tonight. Thank you for your time tonight. What I would ask is just make sure when you're in our Elastoplast, we want to make sure you always read the label, follow instructions for use of their tape. If there's any symptoms persist, talk to your health professional. If there's any questions that may prompt my next couple of talks, please ask them. I think if I get a few similar questions, I'll try and answer as much as I can. And like I said, I hope you got something out of it, and all the best in this time. And I'll speak to you shortly, hopefully. Thank you very much.